So welcome. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Camille Dumont. I am the director of the Center for Career and Professional Development at Post University, and I'm excited to offer this webinar on Introduction to Resume Writing. So I want to let you know this is, resume writing is it's an ongoing process and something that you will be doing throughout your career, hopefully. So this is a very basic resume writing webinar, and I will be happy to answer questions at the end. But I just wanted to talk first about what is a resume. It is a marketing document that sells your candidacy. It provides an outline of your educational background, your work experience, and the key skills you have acquired. Some important tips or points for you to know about a resume. Your resume must be written in a clear and concise manner so the reader can quickly grasp what you offer as a candidate. Most seasoned recruiters, those are the folks that are considering hiring you or putting your resume forth to somebody who will, they'll scan a resume real quick in about 7 to 10 seconds, but don't let that short time fool you. Recruiters have an eye for the key things to look for in a resume. So a lot of care should be put into the construction of your resume. What should that construction look like? Well, some highlights are your strengths, your responsibilities, and your accomplishments. And we'll look at this in further detail later on in this presentation as I show you an example of a resume. One of the most important things about your resume is it should be completely error-free, and you'll see this stated on many slides in this presentation. A resume represents you when you are not there. So recruiters look for reasons to reduce the number of resumes to review, and you don't want your resume to be one of those that will be reduced to the garbage pile. So one error can be all that is needed to discard your resume and your candidacy. Proofreading your resume several times is essential. Use spell check. Ask someone who you trust, who is exceptional at proofreading, to preview it. Always assume there's an error that's lurking somewhere in the resume and review it and review it and review it until you find that error until you are 100% certain that it is error-free. So what are some common errors on a resume? Well, obviously misspellings, as we just discussed, so spell check. It should be used, but don't always assume that spell check is going to necessarily catch every misspelled word. Errors in verb tense. Experiences should be written in the past tense, and current experiences in the grammatical errors of any kind should be avoided. Inconsistent formatting and inappropriate length. So maybe you have a resume that's 2 pages and your work or your experience is a little bit dated, that you can perhaps eliminate some things to make it 1 page. So these are some things to consider. Again, this is all very basic. For this presentation, we're going to talk about the reverse chronological resume. It is probably the most common and perhaps the most conservative resume format. It is most suitable for demonstrating a solid work history and growth and development in your skills. This type of resume requires that you list your most recent experience first, and then that which immediately came before, and so on. So this is a resume that you're probably most familiar with. It's always important to ensure that you're submitting the type of resume that the application or the company is looking for. And that is typically stated in the job description, especially if you're applying for something online. So, for example, if a company asks for an applicant tracking system resume, you would not want to submit a chronological resume. And at that point, you would work on creating an ATS resume, and we can certainly help you with that in career services. And I also encourage you to do some Googling because no resume really should look the same. And I'll show you a template later on, but really it's important to make it your own. Here's some do nots. Do not mention your age, gender, height, or weight. Don't include your social security number. Don't mention religious beliefs or political affiliations unless they are relevant to the position. Do not include a photograph of yourself or a physical description. The company cannot consider that because it could be deemed discriminatory. Do not mention health issues. Do not use first person, I, me. Do not include wage or salary expectations, and do not use abbreviations. Here's some things that you should do. Do use action verbs and phrases, and I'm going to share a couple of pages of those as examples. Proofread carefully. Remember, I told you that you'll see this on a number of slides. So here we are again talking about spelling and grammar. Proofread carefully to eliminate any spelling, grammar, punctuation, and typographical errors. Include highlights of your qualifications or skills to attract an employer's attention. Craft a cover letter as a pitch to people in the profession you plan to work in. And by the way, we'll be doing a webinar on cover letters on November 15th. So I hope you can join us for that. That will be recorded as well. Stand out as different and courageous. Be positive and reflect only the truth. No embellishment on your resume. Simply stick to the truth of what you did and state it in the way that reflects that. Be excited about it, though. Be optimistic about your job prospects. It will shine through in your resume. You'll refine your resume, you'll rework your resume. It's an ongoing process. This is your professional profile. It will hold you in the most professional and positive light, and it's designed to be a quick and easy way for a prospective employer to evaluate what you bring to a job. When written and formatted attractively and also professionally, creatively, legibly, your resume is what will get your foot in the door. You can be proud of your accomplishments, even if they don't seem numerous. Let your resume reflect your personal pride and professionalism. Now, remember those action words that I told you about? I have a few pages of those, 2 to be exact. But these I've organized so you'll see. Action words: avoid helping verbs. Remember from your English class? Assisted, worked with, helped, responsible for. Instead, use action words. Consider these strong action verbs that would reflect the part of the project that you worked on. And I'm going to provide you with some examples. But here I've categorized them. So if you have teaching experience and you're wondering how you're going to describe it, here are some words that you can use. Focus, guided, individualized, informed. If you've worked with data, how can you describe certain things? Assessed, audited, balanced. If you did some creative work, what are some words that you can use? Displayed, drew, entertained, established, fashioned. So I think you get the idea. I told you I have another page for you. If you have some leadership skills and you're wondering how you can describe those or what words you can use, here you go. Hosted, incorporated, increased, initiated, instituted. So hopefully these words will help you. I have some other categories like communication. So rather than maybe using communication, you can use corresponded, debated, defined, delegated. These are all words. Obviously, you would choose words that are appropriate to your experience and descriptive in the manner that shows what you did. So here's some examples. Show how your actions or work ties into larger results, projects, or accomplishments. So here's a really good example. Instead of saying waited tables, perhaps you were a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant. Instead of saying waited tables, served food, handled customer complaints, look at this. You're saying the same thing essentially, but you're saying it in a way that is much more selling of your skills and showing more enthusiasm, more confidence. Manage the largest serving section. Received positive feedback for remaining calm and friendly while finding fast resolutions to challenging customer issues. Maybe you worked with a supervisor on a project. So rather than saying helped supervisor conduct research, you can be more specific and say completed review of 23 research papers on whatever the topic was and communicated summary of findings to supervisor and customers within 2 weeks. You can see here that you're naming the number of research papers that were reviewed. You're giving a time frame of when that was done. You're talking about who you communicated it to, and you're telling your success story in there, just as you were doing when you waited on tables. So there are many more examples that you can find if you Google some ideas or use those action verbs that I shared with you. And of course, here at Career Services, we can help you with that too. There is a resume template that I'm excited to share with you in this guide here. And so this is a template. This is not what your resume needs to look like exactly. This is an example. As I said earlier, you really want to make it your own, but this is a nice setup for you that you might feel comfortable with. So obviously you're going to start with your name and your address. And if you want, and you have a LinkedIn account that is in really good shape, and that's somebody that you've worked with, that you trust, like us in Career Services, tells you that your LinkedIn looks really good and is ready to share, then you can certainly include your LinkedIn profile link here. If you're still working on your LinkedIn profile, that's perfectly fine. Just don't include the link. It's not ready to be shared yet on your resume. You'll include your telephone number and your email. And this is where the company can find all of the information about you so that they know where to reach you. Then we move to the summary and the objective. Now, this is going to take some time for you to write, but what is a summary? What is the objective? It answers the questions, what am I going to provide the organization? What skills will I use to be successful? And how am I going to do that? So as you notice, there's really nothing in there about what the company is going to do for you. So you want to avoid things like, I am looking for a job that can provide me with. Rather, you want to turn that around and talk about what you can do for the company. Be really familiar with what the company is looking for, read the job description, and really try to match your skills or the skills that you have to that job description, and then try to display them in the summary. This can take a bit to write, and I certainly recommend if you want to reach out to Career Services, we're more than happy to help you with this. But this is something that you should have somebody else look at to be sure that it makes sense to them as well as you. Uh, then you'll put your education, especially if you're a student, you want your education on top. Once you've graduated, then you can move that down below experience. But for now, keep your education on top. You're going to name the institution and the location and your degree program. Is your GPA 3.4 or higher? Add it here and consider even bolding it, making it bold and great for the company to see. Be proud of that. And then you'll put your start and end date. For the end date, what I mean is expected date of graduation. So that might be something you want to put here as expected graduation 5/23 or May 2023, whatever you're comfortable with, or whatever looks best in terms of formatting. The most important thing is that the dates are aligned all down the length of the resume. Below education, there's a section for skills, and you can certainly do this in a bulleted list. For a longer list, if you have a lot of skills that you really feel are validated on the resume, then you can go ahead and put those in a paragraph form, separating by commas. But what I'd like to suggest is that if you do list skills, make sure that if you say, for example, you have excellent communication skills, that there's somewhere on your resume in your experience where that is validated, where it clearly shows that you have done a job that has allowed you to use and get really good at those communication skills that you're saying you have. So that's something that you want to think about. If you have technical qualifications and you'd like to use that here, you can certainly do that. It's optional. If the positions you're applying to are technically driven, separating out these qualifications is important. Otherwise, you can just eliminate this altogether. And then once you're done with that section, we're going to move on to experience. So you're going to name the company and the location. So for example, Post University, comma, Waterbury, if you work at Post. Below that, you'll put the position, whatever your position is at work. Then you're going to list your responsibilities. You're going to be specific about them. Use keywords from the job descriptions if applicable, and take a look at the job description to kind of help you to write these, because if you're writing things that are coming from the job description, the employer can really see you and visualize you in that job. But again, you want to be factual and you want it to be truthful and you want it to be validated on your resume. At any specific award or honors that you've received in this experience, and don't use a period where it's not a complete sentence. So be sure that at the end of things, there's not a period if it's not a complete sentence. Again, the start date and to current, because this is going to be your most recent position, which is probably going to be what you're doing right now. Or if it's your most recent and you're currently not working, that's fine. You would just put the start date and the end date. But this is the most recent. And then just before that is going to be the one right before that. So again, name of company, location, your title. Again, all of the things that I mentioned earlier, and just again, be specific. Look at that job description and see how you can really incorporate some of those responsibilities into the experience that you had to ensure that the employer can see you in that role. And so depending upon how much experience you may have one, you may have two, you may have three listings, and that is fine, whatever it works for you, whatever is your experience. And then of course, if you have any licenses or certifications, or maybe any other types of honors, honor certificates, or anything else that you would like to display on your resume. Ideally, you want to make sure it's one page, especially as a student. You want to try to avoid having two-page resume, and you can play around with font and formatting to make that work as well. And by the way, stay tuned for another webinar in the future where we'll be talking about resumes and formatting. For the purpose of this presentation, we're talking mostly about content. And so we'll go back to our screen. And I'd just like to point out to you that the Center for Career and Professional Development is located in North 103 for those of you who are on the main campus. And for our online students, I encourage you to reach out via this email, careerdev@post.edu. And again, my name is Camille Dumont, and I am the director of the Center for Career and Professional Development Career Services at Post University. So I am here to help you and to make an appointment if you would like to review your resume, if you have any questions about it. And also encourage you to attend our next webinar, which is taking place on October 10th, and it's Resumes Part 2. And in that webinar, we'll be talking about formatting. So I encourage you to attend that. So with that, I'd like to open this up for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I would love to answer any questions that you might have. Miranda.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. So
Hi.
I'm sorry I couldn't fully be on camera. But what stuck out to me was when you said to eliminate outdated jobs. When I took a resume class years ago, I was told to keep the outdated jobs.
So
Is
I
this
guess it
something that
depends.
changed?
I guess it depends upon the dates and how far back, and how relevant it is to what you're doing right now. So, if it's like a babysitter type of a thing, I'm just using an example, and that has really nothing to do with what you're doing right now, and it's 5+ years ago, you wouldn't put that on your resume. Think about it like this. It should be beneficial to you. It shouldn't hurt you in any way in terms of your professional brand, what you're trying to put out there, the message that you're trying to get across to the employer when they're looking at your resume and you're not there to explain it. You want to be sure that you're putting out that message that you are comfortable with. Does that help?
That helps. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
I
And
just
again,
had
if you
to
want me to look at it, I'd be more than happy to do so.
I actually just had to revamp my resume. I was going back for my CNA. So I was going through it the other day and I'm looking at it like it's funny you said about the jobs because I have all these old jobs from back in high school, like 11 years ago now. And I'm like, they don't even pertain to the kind of career that I am in. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, do I keep them? Do I not keep them? But
Well,
I
one rule of
decided to
thumb.
not keep them.
Mhm. One rule of thumb, if you're in college, you wouldn't no longer mention high school, because the obvious thing is you went to high school and you got into college, and so that's the past, and there's no need for that. Unless it's something really out of the ordinary or extraordinary, the rule of thumb is you would just eliminate that, and then the goal obviously is to get some experience while you're in college, to display on your resume, even if it's not a job, if it's an internship, a volunteer opportunity, because these are all places where you can develop your skills, those transferable skills that you can put onto that resume to make you attractive to a potential employer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes. Hi,
Is
Rachel.
there a certain font that is acceptable and not acceptable?
That's a great question. And typically I recommend Times New Roman, is a very professional font. Um, that will be discussed more in our next webinar, but I always say to stick to Times New Roman. And it also depends upon the field that you're going into. If you're going into a more artistic field, I would say you can do some colors, or some, creative kind of tables or graphs. But if you're going into a more traditional job and this is your first resume and your first go around in trying to find employment, I'm a big believer in just being safe, and professional, and you really can't go wrong with that. But
Okay. And
I
then
encourage you to attend our next webinar, because during that one, Resumes Part 2, we will be talking about formatting. That's a whole other topic that's really, really important. So I'm glad you brought that up, Rachel.
okay, yeah, because my other question was going to be the color of the resume itself. If there was a certain color that we should have, if it was supposed to be white only, or if we could use a different color that would still look professional.
So when you say, are you talking about the font, the font color?
No, I'm just talking about the page in general.
Oh, the paper. Okay, so you're talking about if you have a hard copy resume.
Yes.
Okay, that's a great question. So I'm a big believer in the very good paper stock that's thick resume paper. You can get that at Staples, Office Max, whatever, Office Supply, but you want it to be resume paper. And a cream color is fine, a white color is fine. Either if you're using envelopes as well, you want them to match. So these are all things that you can get at the office supply stores, but you want to be sure that that it matches. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And I like that question, Rachel, because it's important to bring, if you are going on an interview and you're physically going to the interview, you want to bring with you a couple of copies, printed copies of your resume, and you want those to be on that really good quality resume paper. So be sure to print them on that, have them in a folder in case they ask you for an additional copy, you have it ready for them. So that's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That was a really good question because I always just print it out on regular computer paper.
Yeah. Yes, that I'm glad that we were able to talk about that. I think we've been so used to meeting virtually and not necessarily needing that kind of physical something to give to the potential employer. But I think we're going back to those in-person interviews where we are being asked potentially to provide a resume. And so if that's the case, you do want to be prepared. And so it is worth the investment in that resume paper that as I said, you can get from the office supply store and print out your resume to have ready to hand to the potential employer if they ask you during the interview. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you so much for attending this webinar. I hope that you found it helpful. And for all of those who are watching it on the recording, please feel free to reach out to me. And I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. So take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.